Hello and welcome to Walk and Talk. Today on the alien calendar is 3213 Ongal, Wednesday. So today on the alien, so today I would like to talk about my design for the Datan and how it's based off of personal experience, Ericksonian stages of development, and a lot of evidence from pop psychology as well as religion. So there are. So first, I'll talk about how I got to this stage. I got to this stage when I was 20. I had just had one of the worst breakdowns of my life, or maybe the worst breakdown of my life. It cost my parents, family, or actually my mom's family, maybe $60,000 for treatment, and and I had to move on from my big pie in the sky idea of shipping nanobots to everyone's homes through pipes and giving them stardust, actually, and printing food in their homes from a design made by millions of people on computers. So, what did I do with this design? So first, I looked at a Vsauce video. A Vsauce video came out around that time. I can't really tell you exactly what Vsauce video because I don't have like a script. But a Vsauce video came out around that time where they said that your memory is on a logarithmic scale. Specifically, they mentioned the 10 times powers of 2 log. So they said that when you multiply your age by 2, you go up one stage. So you say when you're 10, then 10 to 20 is one stage. 20 to 40 is the next stage, and 40 to 80 is the next stage. So 20 feels like half of 80, even though 80 is actually 4 times 20. So that is where I got it. I first started with I was still, going to school. This is before my breakdown. I was going to school and I was trying to write my autobiography, so I thought of trying to write a revamped version of my autobiography. I have the version that's the best. It's Artism. None of them really compared after that. But so 8 and the first one before that didn't really compare either. So I thought that I had only lived to be 20 years old. So I thought about what my border ages would be. And I thought, it's not just going to have one. It's going to have multiple. So there will be x, y, x times 2, y times 2, x times 4, y times 4, x times 8, y times 8. And so the ages that I settled on were the ages I settled on were 5 and 7. And 5 and 7 would be overwritten later. I thought 7 was a good age because it showed a good physical transformation, or a very big physical transformation. You can see in Mess of Comedy that when I was 14, my hair got curly, and that kind of made my face look completely different after that. And I also got a big chin. I had kind of a pointy chin before that. So So let's see. So I also thought 5 was a good thing because 5 was coming up. I could tell 5 was going to be a big thing. 20. 20 is 5 times 4. So I thought 20 would. So I wrote this whole autobiography out in terms of like powers of 2 times 5 and 7, and that was highly obscene. I wrote down I wrote it in songs. I wrote every possible. I just thought that I thought that the one of artism was too PC. I don't know. I thought it could have used some sexual themes. Because if you looked at any other fiction about young adults, it would always talk about their sex lives. So that's kind of why I thought it would be important to include that, but I am not, a big director, so I can't get away with that. A lot of them probably shouldn't. So I then went to the residential treatment center, and I realized that I was looking back on my home videos a lot because I had a bunch of home videos that I set up just for that purpose, and I looked back all the way down my Facebook feed. And when I looked all the way down my Facebook feed, I saw a post from 2008 when I was actually no, I saw a post from 2012 when I was 16. And the post from 2012 when I was 16 said that when you're it said that I had been living in 2008 for the past 4 years. And so looking at that post, I realized, yeah, I did live in 2008 until 2012. Every time I had a paper, I would instinctively think the date was in 2012, and I would instinctively think I would instinctively think the date was 2008, and I would instinctively think my age was 12, even though it was 13 or 14 or 15. It's so extreme that I even applied this to other people's ages. When I was 14, I made Mess of Comedy 5, and you can see me say you'd have to be 83 or something to get this joke. 83 or something is supposed to be my age of my grandpa, but my grandpa was 83 when I was 12. When that came out, he was 85. So you can see that the time was just sort of partitioned like that. If you look back on my 7-year-old, home video, you can see that right before my 7th birthday, I'm saying I'm about to turn 6, and that's because 7 and 6 are part of the same age. 6 is 12 divided by 2. 8 is the next age, 16 divided by 2. And then if you look at 3, my mom actually says, "How are you?" And I misinterpret it as, "How old are you?" And I say, "I'm 3 years old." I knew exactly how old I was at 3 years old. And I knew exactly that I was 3 years old until I was 4 years old. And then I knew I was 4 years old. And then I knew I was 5 years old. But when I turned 6, I was 6 until I was 8. I was 8 until I was 10. I was 10 until I was 12. I was 12 until I was 16. I was 16 until I was 20. I was 20 until I was 24. Now I'm 24 at 28. So that's sort of the way that I decided to do it. I decided to do it in terms of those 3 ages, 3, 4, and 5, times any power of 2. 3, 4, and 5 times 0 times 1 times 2 times 4 times 8 times 16, and then it was over. So what do these ages mean? So the very bottom of the hierarchy of ages is actually based off of It's actually based off of Ericksonian stages. So I asked my mom about what the stages of development were, and she brought that up. She's a psychologist, so she had that on file. And I scooped it up and looked at how the ages roughly went to my ages, or went to each of the three areas, or sorry, went to each row, went to each row of my hierarchy of ages. So the that's what I called it. I called it the hierarchy of ages. The reason I called it the hierarchy of ages was because the age directly below, which is half the current age, always rules the current age, meaning that it determines what is believed at that, or it determines what the current age is built on. What the idea is, what for each category the current age is built on. So the first Ericksonian stage is the first is the row below the first row. So the row below the first row is you divide the row by 3, and then you divide the number above it by 2, and then you subtract 3 months. So 3 divided by 2 minus 3 divided by 2 minus 3 months is 15 months. 4 divided by 2 minus 3 months is 21 months. 5 divided by 2 minus 3 months is 27 months. Okay, yeah. So in these ages, you look to your caretakers. You have your mothers, your fathers, your religions, your grandparents, and that's mainly what you notice. I remember saying that I remember things from this era as kind of one big jumbled soup, but I can kind of figure out what happened when based on how the themes are related to the themes above. Like I remember that my grandfather taught me how to build things with cardboard at 2, and he helped me figure out how to build things with cardboard at 4. But I suppose that must have been 15 months. Sorry, I suppose that must have been 21 months because it's directly before 4. It's directly below 4. And that's just the way things tend to go. The next level is also from Ericksonian stages. It's traits. So what do you notice about yourself? Like, you could notice, like I noticed when I was 3 that I was rebellious. I noticed that it was 4 that I was an inventor because of my grandpa. I noticed when I was 5 that I needed to be more original. I needed a more original. Sorry, I needed to have a trademark. I needed to have a more original name. I'd say that at 3, I had at 3, I had my first connection to the synagogue because I was starting Hebrew school. I remember the Aleph base, the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet song. I think that must have been related. I think what happened when I was 2 that must have been related to that must have happened at 15 months. That was when I would say God bless every time I went to bed. I would say God bless everyone in my life every time I went to bed, one by one. I made this joke in a previous version, but it's kind of crude. I said it's a lot more godly than what I do before I go to bed now. So I when I was so the next sorry five was based on my mother. My mother was 40, so directly above that 40, 20, 10, 5. When I was 5, I depended on my mother to say no to some of the policies that my kindergarten was doing. Um, when I was 6, when I was 6 to 12, that represents a different thing that's not in Ericksonian stages. So this is where it diverges. Remember when I said I wanted to? So remember when I said I wanted to make a printer that could print anything in your home? So that means that everyone basically has to be an inventor or a designer, because all the jobs that have to be done repetitively or without creative input are just done by machines. People have talked about this for a while. I don't think it's going to happen with AI, because AI is doing the creative work, and of course, I think it'll be more like people just being isolated with the AI and living with the AI by themselves, and having and just requesting their own ideas from the AI, and the AI producing everything they need, and then never interacting with another human again. But in the ideal future, there's this. I say ideal with a grain of salt, because I never passed through college, so I can't actually work in this ideal future. So in the ideal future, you would want to be as unique as possible. Ericksonian stages are all about good versus bad development. Like what are you supposed to develop, and what are you not supposed to develop? And if you're not supposed to develop something, it says you're all the way back in that stage, even if you developed further on. So I would say that I would say that my model is a little bit more friendly to people with special needs. It says they can offer something unique. They can offer their unique thing. So what is development in that way at 6 to 12? Well, if you look at the song 7 Years by Lucas Graham, you'll see that he develops his first skill of songwriting at 7 years old. That's in the 6 to 7 age. So 6, 8, 10. That's where 7 years old takes place. And then also in Circle Game by Joni Mitchell, she refers to the same milestone happening in roughly the same place. I forget exactly how, but she says something about that. So with people in electronics and other things, if you look at this is a weird thing to reference fiction. If you look at the Scholastic series Animorphs, it says that there's this. It says at one point that adults cannot become Animorphs, because once you're 8 or 9, you have decided who you want to be. So there you have another age in there. 8 or 9, decide who you want to be. 6 to 7, same row. And finally, you have the 10 to 12 area, which could be populated by just the goal of freedom. My mom, when she was 6, actually, not when she was 10, but when she was 6, she ran away from home using money that her grandmother got her for her birthday, a shopping cart. She took her and her friend. She took her baby sister and her dog with her, and they went and started buy and sell Mr. Potato Head toys until they were caught and scolded by a circle of adults. Um, but when she told me that story, I tried to run away at the age of 4. And when I was the age of 10, I realized how to actually do it. You have to. The idea was that if you ran away from a camp, they'd catch you and they'd take you back. But if you ran away from the camp and when they caught you, you hit them, you hit the counselors. This was a bad thing to do, obviously, but it accomplished the goal better. You got kicked out. You got kicked out of the camp. You didn't have to. I mean, and that created terrible patterns of behavior that lasted, until maybe I was 24. But if you hit the counselors, you would get kicked out of the camp, and then you could go home for the rest of the week. And I really thought that this was important. I thought of it as a skill. I didn't think of it as a skill, but I think that when I was coming up with the hierarchy of ages, it made sense to label it as a skill. So when I was, so you can have skills in any area, and you can have skills in freedom. Any area of a career, you can have skills in freedom. So when you are in the next level is based off of modern psychological teachings. And so basically what they say is the prefrontal cortex develops at 24 or 25 actually, but it's developing at 24 and it finishes by 25. So your prefrontal cortex develops at 25. And so when does it start developing? Around 12. So that's the full area of this age. So what do you have? So what do you develop at that time? Well, the prefrontal cortex is devoted to attention and planning. So that means that what you're developing is plans for your future. You're developing long-term plans. And yes, I did have a different plan at 12 than I did at 16 than I had at 20 to 24. And that was and those plans were based on the skills below them. I had a plan to be a YouTuber when I was 12 because I was learning how to write and act when I was 6, and that is because, well, I don't really know how it relates to 3. I think it relates to 3 because I was being original. I was being wacky. And wackiness is something that goes into 12 because it's comedy. I was making comedy. And then at 16, I was trying to create a brand new nation that used futuristic technology. So futuristic technology is based off of the technology that I developed when I was 8, which is based off of the engineering skills that I developed when I was 4, which is based off of what I developed when I was 2, which was a reverence for my grandpa, who was an engineer. So then when I was 20, my main idea was cataloging my life in this hierarchy of ages. And so I said 20 to 24. So I said when I was 20 to 24, I wanted to understand why I thought the way I did. And this was based off of, and I was trying to understand the behaviors that I started when I was 10, how to stop them. And I was trying to do this while creating a brand for myself in the in the in the things that I was storing for the future to use as an adult. So then what's the next level? So the next level is prime working years. People say, so basically, 12 times 2 is 24. That's the beginning of prime working years. And 24 times 2 is 48, which is the end of prime working years. And people will say, this is your prime working years. People say their prime working years are from 24 to 48. And that is not to say that you might not, that is not to say that you will definitely be retired by 48. And that is not to say that you will definitely be working when you're 24, because I'm not working when I was 24. But it brings a stark contrast to the next level. The next level is what I call bottling legacy. It sounds like an ad for an alcoholic drink, but it basically means you're putting away things that you. It basically means you're putting away things that define you into other sources. I base this one off the life of Jesus. Jesus, I'm Jewish, so I think of Jesus as a person, but I do recognize that he had a spiritual influence, and I extend this to everybody else. So we know that Jesus died at the age of 30 something, or close to the age of 30. And we know that the Gospels, according to records, were written when he would have been 48, 64, or 80, in that area, 48 to 96. This aligns with the idea that most people have when they're alive at 48 to 96, which is taking care of their grandkids, the same way my grandfather would instill in me his design for his design of working with cardboard, the way that he worked as an engineer in his prime working days. So he's kind of transferring those skills onto me, or he was. He's dead now. So here's the thing. How is this different than prime working years? Because when you're in your prime working years, you can also have kids. You can't have kids, or you almost can't have kids when you're 48 to 96. Or you can't have kids for almost all to 48 to 96. So the question is, what's the difference? Well, when you're in your prime working years, you're doing things for other people for one of two reasons. One, you're genuinely altruistic. For two, you want them to give you something in return. If you're in bottling legacy, you're doing it for one reason. And that one reason is that you want to is that you want to do this for your ideas so they get a home in these people. So that's somewhere in between, because these people might not want your ideas, but you're not getting anything from them in terms of work. So you might actually be in the bottling legacy stage and working in senior management, or living as a grandpa, or writing a novel, because novels are legacy. But it's why that matters. And that is the conclusion of my podcast. See you in the future, Future Datan.